Okay, so we're going to start with numerology. So numerology is based on the fact that numbers carry energy. There is research out there to say that the Bible was first written in number and then interpreted into words. Okay, so numbers have always had a big relation in our life. Even before when we had orators and people weren't actually writing the written word back then, numbers have always been a part of our life. And so, okay, so you kiddies, do you want to go and work out there? Do you want to play out there? You can play just out there. Just on the side there and on the other side of the curtain. There you go. So with numerology, each of the numbers carries an energy. It's based on Pythagoras. So if you want to get into the research of numerology, you can start with Pythagoras and work from there. There's some amazing books out there. It's only a new field of learning for the ones that the more modern numerology. It's been an interpretation that's only been present in the 20th century. There was more in the history of numerology before then that I'm not aware of, but you could do your own research. So based on the Pythagoras numerology, each number carries an energy. So number 1, as you can imagine, is the self. Who am I? Okay, it's number 1 energy. Number 2, of course, is duality. Relationships, cause and effect. If I push you, you fall down. Number 3, we've now got 3 things. And so how do they come together? Well, we've got to be creative. How we bring 3 together. You know, if there's 3 of us hanging out, you know, sometimes 2's company, 3's a crowd. We've got to be creative in how we're going to hang out. We've got to find the balance between us to be able to do that. Number 4, and I'm only quickly taking you through this today. If you want to learn more, we've got courses where you learn more fully into this. Number 4 is the foundation builder. That's when you just know you need to do it and you can't really logically explain why, but it's a physical action. Okay, number 5 is right in the middle of the chart of numerology. It's about which direction do I make change? In which direction, towards which number do I make a commitment? Number 6 is about the role in family, the role in community. Okay, the roles we carry in groups of people. So number 6, guess what this year is? 2 plus 2 plus 2. 2022 is a number 6 year. So this year is about the roles we play in community, the roles we play in our family. And so what's coming up for everyone? Family stuff, community stuff. What role do we play? Who are we within these? This is humanity's role this year. So yes, we can get caught in all the narratives, oh, the Illuminati doing this, them doing that, they're doing this. Or we can go, wait a minute, let's just look at numerology. Okay, well this year the focus is on finding our role in our family, our role in community. Okay, number 7 is the teacher-learner number. Last time we had a year which was number 7, it was 2014. 2 plus 0, 2, 2 plus 1, 3, 3 plus 4 is 7. So the last year at Gunya, when we had a number 7 year, we had, I think it was 8 teachers teaching in the temple, Monday to Friday, lessons back to back for the whole of the year. We didn't plan that. I didn't even know a lot about numerology then. It just happened. But knowing from past experience, and I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this, next year is going to be full on with teaching in the temple. It's already building for us. We're already working out how community, our living community here binds with the teaching of the temple. You know, that's what we're sorting out this year. Next year, poof, off we go. Okay, number 8 is about the individual. It's about learning through experience. So when you do, and then if you come to the numerological, astrological course, you'll learn how to find your own numbers that are pertinent to your life and your path. When you've got, I'll use this in children because it's so interesting. If you've got a child who's got a number 8 as their life path, their destiny, their journey, you can't tell a number 8 what to do. Number 8s need to learn through their own experience. That's what they're here for. So if you have 8 in any of your charts, you've got to do it your way. The tricky part is to remember to tell others that you're a number 8, and then we know not to say anything. Okay, whereas if you've got a lot of number 2 energy in your chart, then you're going to be more about being with everyone and working together. Okay, so one of the questions in the last workshop about how you define who does what role in community, well, find out everyone's number and you can work out who works best in what role. Find out everyone's astrology and see what their makeup is. Work out how they best operate. So number 9 is about completion, commitment. It's the humanitarian. They're looking at the big picture. They're looking at the world going, whoa, man, wow, I can see how we can make this a better place. But they can't do it all themselves. They've got to learn to communicate. They've got to learn to delegate. They've got to take the part they can do and do that. They've got to know when the commitment's finished for them. It's not part of their journey anymore. They've got to know when they need to keep going until they're finished and completed. You know, it's the last number in the numerology, number 9. Then we get into the master numbers. So number 10 is the totality of expression. Number 10 represents the expressing totally who you are. So people that carry number 10 in their chart, they'll be very expressive, or maybe they'll be very suppressed. And their journey in life is to learn to just be themselves totally. Okay, so when we had a 10-year, you know, if we go back and work out all the numbers, that year that we had as a 10-year was a year of expression. Let's just have a look. 10, 2018, 8, 9, 10, 11, 2017. If anyone's got any memory of 2017, I haven't right now, too much has happened. That was a 10-year. So that was a full expressive year or a fully suppressed year for others. Okay, and from memory, that's when the Great Spirit started pushing everyone to deal with their karmic stuff. In my memory of doing lots of readings and working with lots of healings with people, that was a big emphasis. That was the beginning part of the karmic journey of getting on as a humanity, of dealing with our karma. Number 11 is a master number. It's about mastering the intuition, not just hearing it, but actually mastering it. So they say that people with number 11 in their chart, this is their last life potentially. So if we get into multidimensionalism without going too far into it, you know, let's say we're coexisting on many planes at once right now, and there is no past or future. It's just now. If you're carrying number 11 in your chart right now, chances are you're working on more than one dimensional field at one time. And it's only your intuition that can guide you through that, because to be logical about it, those other dimensions don't really allow for logic so well. So with number 11 in your chart, which I've got, that's my master number, is I've got to follow my intuition. But of course my Virgo wants to be all anal about it. Anyway, 22 is illumination in action. Often people with number 22 in their chart, they respond really well to animals, but really struggle with people. Okay, we had a 22 year. Some numerologists called that the 22 year. This year they're also saying there's so many twos that they've got to look at 22 as well in the numerology this year. To our ceremony we did, I think we did it on 2022, there was a lot of 22 energy, there was a lot of 2 energy. I think there was about 12 of us here, and it was super powerful. I mean, it's illumination in action. So here we are, lit up, brighter than we've ever been lit, as in our memory, of course, because we always say, you know, it's the first time, but it's not. We're just on this spiral, you know, and it was just super powered. Number 33, there's no words for 33. People that carry 33, they're often everyday people that just get on with it. I've often had a theory that what we know as the sheeple, you know, the people that just do, you know, what they're told and everything and go with it, I often question whether they're the evolved ones, that they're just filling in here for our learning. You know, because we're so passionate in our, you know, well, man, that's not right, blah, 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 and yet they're just cruising along. Maybe they're the evolved ones that have found acceptance and tolerance, and we're the ones here to learn. Dolores Cannon is an amazing person to look into with her books. Her Nostradamus books is amazing. And she says that there's fill-ins, and the fill-ins are there to allow us to learn. You know, she also talks about walk-ins as well that come in to teach us more, which we see more prevalently at Duff festivals. And, you know, it's quite amazing for those that go to Duff festivals how many walk-ins you actually get to meet. Yeah. So 33, so they're the numbers that we're looking at. What I want to do today with numerology, because I don't want to spend too long on this because we want to get into the astrology, is just look at today. So today, to add up the number, the flavour of today, we've got to add every number together. So we add 2 plus 0 is 2. We want to add 0 and 3. And 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So to find out the number of the day, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Guess what today is? Mastery of the intuition. What a great day to have an open day. See how you can use the numbers to work with what you're doing? So today's a good day for us all to come together in spirit, even though we're really. So that's numerology. If you want to learn more, on the 2nd of April, we'll be doing the Introduction to Astrology, Numerology for parents who want to look at their children's charts. On the Sunday, the 3rd, we'll be doing Introduction to Astrology, Numerology for yourselves, where you get to learn to read your own charts. Okay, so you can see us later about that. All the information's on the board over there. But let's go over to astrology. Do you want me to start it? You want to start it?
So where is everyone at? I suppose is everyone a reasonable degree of astro, perception of the whole astrology thing? All of us have some degree of either reading the stars or something like that. So,
show of hands. Maybe a show of hands if you've gone down an astrology rabbit hole.
I call myself a newborn, and I've only had my eyes open for about a year and a half or so. I was, what did you call the number? Just filling in.
Yeah, you're just filling in. All right. Well, let's look at today.
I was just going to say, just in a general sense. So, like, my relationship with astrology was out of curiosity and journeying in. Over the last 35 years, I don't consider myself an astrologer. I can go down and work hard to help interpret a chart, but it's more the overall mechanics. It's sort of like a model for unpacking the mystery of life and creation. And so you've got this model there that's like a big clock that assists you to just have a sense of what you're in. And it's obviously very old. It's all of our ancestors sitting there watching the sky, and they're watching the sky for very important reasons. Like that's how they navigated. So they were able to get to all sorts of places on the planet that they didn't know were there, and keep watching the stars. And so that navigation of the earthly plane evolved into the navigation also of our psyche. And that's certainly what a large part of studying the wheel is. Sort of like a tool there for us to do self-discovery, self-reflection, a look at our psyche or our soul. I've always liked to call it astro-philosophical soul survey, so that you're endeavouring to survey the nuts and bolts of your own soul. I've also liked to think of it as just being like a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku. So it just sits there, like you haven't got to go and bow down to it or anything. It's just there like a crossword puzzle. That that part of you that's puzzling your life adventure and your existence and your I am and all that sort of stuff. You bring that puzzle out that helps, gives you ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have had. You can unpack it really, really simply. Obviously, we all look at the sun sign, but we've got a moon sign, and so there, hey presto, the Western yin and yang. So you can look at, the mechanics of your yang and the mechanics of your yin without looking any further into the giant labyrinth rabbit hole that the astrological wheel is. Just there, hey presto, the two major luminaries will give you a huge amount of information just looking at where they are in relation to each, whether they're opposition or they're together or they're square or whatever. All of that, as you unpack the mechanics of that model of the universe, allows you to look at that unique moment you were born, because that's it is. It's a clock, and at for me, at 1 degree of Taurus o'clock, back, I was there, and so that particular click on the wheel, that's my little snapshot in the mysterious unfolding of time. And so from using it as a crossword puzzle, a Sudoku, as I look in there and just slowly over all these years going down the rabbit hole, it never fails to go, wow. It's always relevant. It always tells you something that you sort of knew, but you didn't know to be able to say it. And it says it to you. It works like a mirror. And it's so ridiculously simple. Like it's, particularly when we're sort of looking at tropical astrology, it is saying it's relative to the northern hemisphere, but we'll just talk in our experience of the day and the seasons. So Aries is spring, but for us here in the southern hemisphere, that happens in September. So our own living experience of being in spring is how we understand what is the dynamics of that intelligence part of the wheel. There's 12 flavours of intelligence going from Aries around to Pisces, and they all relate to the unfolding of our experience of the day and our unfolding of the experience of the year. So Aries is sunrise, and that we can sort of put that first couple of hours of the day, 6 till 8 a.m. So you can get a sense and develop your own sense and feeling for whenever that Aries thing pops up. I know what it means because I know what my life is between 6 and 8, and I can observe other lives between 6 and 8 a.m. That's the general sort of, the generalised stamp of that Aries energy, and the same with being in spring. So we can relate all of them to each 2 hours through the day, or each chunk of our seasons coming around relative to the northern hemisphere, because that's what the model's built on. But by virtue of us being down here in the southern hemisphere, sort of irrelevant what, sort of like if you had a book and you were looking at the information, it's doesn't matter where you're up to in regards looking at that information. So meaning that if it's saying that Aries is relative to spring, but by virtue of the fact we're in the southern hemisphere, it's autumn for us, that's sort of irrelevant to what the knowledge it's handing you. So I don't care where you are, this is what that means. And so that helps us. That helps us in our general, in my simple general way of journeying into the whole astrology thing, was those simple practical understandings, being able to relate to that part of the day, that part of the season, and then building on that. We can look at, that's the general 12 parts of the clock, each of the signs are like the 1 to 12 on the clock, and then say, okay, well, let's look further. There's the hands on the clock. So the hands on the first 2 hands on the clock are the sun and the moon. And so they're telling a sort of a time, aren't they? They're telling a general masculine, so like for me, a masculine Taurus energy for where my sun is on the clock. And then over there, where Capricorn, where my moon is. So saying, oh, very early this boy. And so when we can go, okay, well, the wheel has lots of hands on the clock. Can go then away from those hands and say, well, let's look at the next 2 hands on the clock, Mars and Venus. It's suggesting that those 2 hands on the clock are your means of looking at, okay, how do I express my masculinity and my femininity? So Mars is how the flavour through which we're expressing our masculinity, and Venus, the flavour through which we express our femininity. So those 2 hands on the clock, they've got another little separate rabbit hole. That's all related to all the other ones, but if we isolate them, it makes it a little less complex. We can have a look. So I'm just looking at that expression of my yin and yang. There's my yin and yang in the sun and moon. There's the expression of my yin and yang there in Mars and Venus. And then as I'm doing all that and relating to the whole of the world, I've got my Mercury. So how do I communicate that which? So Mercury is there. It tells you a bit about your means of communicating. And then we've got the next 2 important ones, Jupiter and Saturn. And so that's how we're commercing from our heart in regards our dealing with all of the commerce that we will meet in reality. And so we've got Jupiter in its simplest generalised keyword is unconditionality. And then Saturn is conditionality. So what is that balance in our own heart between that which we are commercing in our unconditionality and that which we need to commerce in our conditionality? And so to some degree in the chart, when we're looking at our Jupiter and Saturn, it gives us ideas that we otherwise wouldn't have had in regards that way that we would choose to commerce that conditionality and unconditionality. And then so they're just sort of the Sun and the Moon, Mars and Venus, Mercury, Jupiter and Saturn. That's all our personal planets. That's all what we're alive. The clock sort of, the universal models telling us in our ability to click out into the world that we're sharing and commercing in. And then it's saying, okay, there's more, but wait, there's more. There's an ever deeper rabbit hole here. Then we can say, oh, well, what's the outer planets? What's Uranus? Uranus is then saying, oh, guess what? You are a unique individual. This particular planet here is telling you about your pure awareness, that which is your immortality, hidden in plain sight, that which bit of you which never dies and is responsible for making you absolutely, completely, individually different to all the other 7 billion dudes you're down here hanging out with. And so that's what the little Uranus one's there. And then you've got Neptune is there sitting there saying, well, we're all here together, and how do we sort of sense and feel in our spirit out into how do we understand and sense what models are we using for our spiritual understanding. There's all sorts of different speculations in regards our having spiritual understanding. We've got all sorts of speculations institutionalized in religiosity, so Neptune represents those. We've got wisdom traditions and we've got indigenous traditions, and all of it is like a giant smorgasbord of models that we may come and feed from to assist us in our own crafting of our own speculation. And then in having done that, then you come into Pluto, which is what Joe wanted to talk about. That's happening at the moment. Pluto is going, oh, crikey, knowing all that, I can be more. I can go right into that highest octave of that masculine expression. Mars is there, and then Pluto is the highest octave of that masculine expression. And so it can be so absolutely deliberate that it can just disregard the whole of creation, be completely belligerent and horrible and nasty, but it's endeavouring to achieve an outcome, utter transformation. Like I like to explain Pluto as sort of like it's the slowest one, the slow planet, 245 years or something like that to do a lap of the wheel. That hand on the clock is very slow, but I like to think of that hand on the clock like an oxy torch, and it's just going around absolutely, completely transforming everything that it goes through. And so for us as a mob now, in this modern time, it's presently doing its thing in Capricorn. And so Capricorn is all about the big structures. Pardon?
Corporate.
Yes, all the corporates, the governments, all of those structures that we're subject to and that we have to fit in around. And so Pluto is journeying through them because they all need to be transformed. So they're all in a bit of a schmozzle at the moment as that blowtorch is going through. So we're seeing all sorts of governing structures particularly being revealed. Everyone's going, oh, hang on, this is a bit smelly. Like I used to really like this, and like I grew up with that. Like my grandma had us, like all of the system was you would put your heart into the whole of the system, and every policeman from my grandmother's perspective growing up was like the pillars of society, and the Queen, she was the epitome of goodness itself. Like back when I was 7 or 8 and the Queen came to Australia, we were in our bestest of best clothes to be taken down the road as she drove past in a car like that. And we all stood on the footpath. She wouldn't even have seen us. I'm thinking, you've got clothes on, but who cares? But my grandma, and so that generation of pure-hearted, they would give their, like that generation before, giving their life to the nation. My granddad going out into Gallipoli and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely from the pureness, beauty of their heart. But we're coming to a point now saying, whoa, we're starting to find out that they aren't actually very nice. Like they've been playing with our innocence. We're like our population, like a big bunch of kids. And I'm sort of thinking now, as I'm watching this last couple of years, the government is like a big pedo sitting there. Oh, come on, boys and girls, come on. And so this pedo grooming the innocents for penetration with the jab. And so that's what my beautiful, gentle-hearted grandma and me mum would never see. They wouldn't even believe you if you started saying, boy, I don't think you can trust these dudes. And that's what I think Pluto's doing. Pluto has gone through, it's messing things up so much, and it's removed the covers of the illusion of their pure goodness, their being the epitome of goodness and the pillars of society. And everyone's going, whoa, man, that just, something smelly here. It's not quite right. And so in that, as we're looking and relate the astrology wheel to what's happening presently, this last couple of years in particular has been Pluto's journey through the chart, Pluto's conjunction with Saturn, Pluto's conjunction with Jupiter at the same time in there. Pluto and Saturn coming together was our heaviest time of martial law, that sort of 18 months ago, when everything was locked down, and that was just pure Saturn and Pluto together in Capricorn. So, right, you're staying right there, you are not moving. And so anyway, we're in that process, and so the blowtorch is going through. We're nearly at the end, 2026, but it does a few retrogrades. It goes up and goes, oh, come back. Oh, I didn't quite get that bit. Come back a bit. Come back and go forward. Oh, we're in Aquarius. Oh, hang on, I'll come back. And then blow. I didn't quite finish that bit off. So by 2026, Pluto will have finished blowtorching Capricorn and then start its journey in Aquarius. So what does that mean? It's gone through and it's blowtorched the whole of the system, left it in a schmozzle. It's all crikey going, what's where, how is it? And now it's ready to transform our collective social body. So that's what Aquarius is. It's our collective social body. So we then collectively have to go, whew, okay, the system's all been schmozzled. We've got to reapply ourselves. We've got to go, okay, we've got to have a different way. We've got to create a new way of being, a new world, etc. But a new way of being in particular, because that Aquarius is our social body. It is our collective social body. It's how we do everything together. In that sort of rising of the age of Aquarius, regardless of trying to pinpoint dates, what you can pinpoint is stuff that's happening. And so Aquarius, it represents essentially electricity. And so when we look back to the Industrial Revolution, it was just discovered, Uranus, the boss of Aquarius, was just discovered when the Industrial Revolution began back in the 1780s. And then all of a sudden, that higher rational thinking say, shit, we can build all this stuff really, like production line, let's go for it. And then our brains thought, oh, electricity. And that is another sign of Uranus and Aquarius, electricity. And electricity kept going along and it evolved. It evolved out of electricity into electronics, and then electronics into computers, computers into the internet, and the internet into social media. And that's when the flag went in the ground. That's pure Aquarius, is all that social media. So regardless of anyone pointing at any dates, the stuff that's happening is what, for me, identifies our arrival into that age. So our being in the very early stages of our dealing with social media, it's sort of like all of our species is like a kid. All this Aquarian energies come through, and us as a species, as a kid, oh, we've got this social media. and we're all carrying on like chooks with it because we're still immature in our humanity collectively to deal with that new way of being. But I sort of feel as we journey into the more fullness of the Aquarian age, that it's probably going to be our greatest tool, our social media, as we mature into using it more humanely. We're going through all the teething problems at the moment with all of the cyberbullying for kids and all of the other madness that's out there, but we will evolve. Do anything you would like to add, Dia?
Okay. Yeah, well, because astrology is such a massive field. I mean, you've got Chinese astrology, you've got Mayan astrology. I know what I want to add. What we were talking about, Nalita, months ago, about potentially and possibly, because everything's only potential and possible now. We don't know the truth anymore, although there are some truths. But anyway, the Mayan calendar 2012, maybe 2021 was the actual date. So maybe what we were taught was going to happen in 2012 with the end of the ethics, the last part of the pyramid of all the things we needed, the values we needed to go through to learn. Potentially, we were chatting around the fire probably over a year ago now, and the leader brought it up that possibly it's actually 2021 is the end of the Mayan calendar. Which kind of makes sense when you look at Uranus in Taurus. And Uranus being, as Pete's mentioned, such a prominent planet right now. If you weren't to look at any other planets except for Uranus right now, you could pretty well just stick to that.
The reason being is because Uranus Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So when you're looking at each sign of the zodiac, each sign of the zodiac is a domicile for a particular planet, which means that's its home space. So Aries, that's where Mars lives, that's his dojo. And then Taurus, that's where Venus lives, that's her smick place. And then for up there in Aquarius and Pisces, we've come through the age of Pisces, and who is domiciled to Pisces? Jupiter and Neptune. Now, when we're looking at the archetypal geometries of those particular, gods, if you want to call them that, Jupiter or Zeus, another clue is given if you go across into the other, collective mythologies of Christianity. Jupiter Zeus, or Zeus, is Jesus. So the same archetypal geometry of our understanding of Jesus is Jupiter. And so Jesus ruled, or Jupiter ruled, the age of Pisces. But it didn't rule by himself, so in those other bodies of work, it's not necessary. I suppose it is when we go to the Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. Neptune is the highest octave of our femininity in those mechanics. And by virtue of its, when you think of Neptune, the king of the ocean, what is that ocean? It's the ocean of human emotion. So every single feeling and emotion that we wear as a species all together is a giant ocean, and that's the ocean of which Neptune is the commander. But it is a king, so it's a masculine energy, but it's the highest octave of our femininity. So, the complexity of unpacking the archetypal geometry of those symbols, we're able to see that although it is the highest octave of our femininity, it is expressed in a deliberate way. That's why it is the king of the ocean. So it is using a yang expression to meet that highest octave of our femininity. So what does it mean by the highest octave of our femininity? It's our ability to sense and feel. So Neptune is saying, are you able to come into any neighbourhood of your existence? So you come out, sit down to have your cuppa in the morning just with your immediate clan, and you can sit there and you can feel the general vibe of what's going on. Are they happy today, or have they got the shits? You can go out into a bigger part of your clan, into your tribe, and you can just have a general sense. You can feel the vibe of where everyone's at. And that's what that Neptunian thing is. Able to feel the vibe of every neighbourhood of your existence. We have those senses. We can feel out and just feel the general vibe of where everyone's at. And so that's why it's the highest octave of our femininity. So we were with the expansiveness of that Jupiter, Jesus archetype through that 2,000 years of Pisces, developing our unconditionality, unconditional love, that the highest octave of our honour in commerce, which is what that archetype, and in cahoots with the highest octave of our femininity in that sign of Pisces. Now, to not get too far down that rabbit hole, we compare it. Now that we're coming into the age of Aquarius, they hand over. Jupiter and Neptune say, okay, my job's done. I'm no longer ruler of the age. We're in Aquarius now. Okay, Uranus and Saturn, you guys are on. You are now the new rulers of the age. And so that's why we would look a little more at what is Uranus and Saturn doing in the chart, because they're the new boss now. So wherever they are and whatever they're, whether it's a square or opposition or whatever, the relationship between those two rulers, also the relationship between those and the guys that have just handed the keys to the kingdom over, you know, Jupiter and Neptune. They're sort of, I'm finished now, but I can still advise you. I can tell you what's going on, but you guys are in charge. You're calling the shots. And Uranus is, from my way of thinking, is the main energy that's calling the shots. Now, Uranus, if you're not familiar with who Uranus is in the world of astrology, in the world of the tarot, it is the divine fool, the Joker card out of the pack. So we've gone from Jupiter, Jesus being the ruler of the age, to now the Joker. So when you sort of sit and meditate on that, it makes it like, crikey, we are in a very different, strange time where you've got to tap into your trickiness. That's what the Fool's telling you. You've got to be not like Jupiter was saying, oh, you've got to be unconditional and love everyone and push all that energy out there. Now you're to say, okay, we've got that. We can see that how that's worked, but now you've got to be tricky, because we can see that that's not necessarily going to work. It's good and we need it and we need to have it, but when we get into the common law, we'll journey a bit further down that rabbit hole and join the astrology too.
Yeah, so Uranus, you know, like with the aspects, which in the course we get more into, of how the planets all come together, they actually told us a few months ago to look at, or even a couple of years ago, to look out for floods around this time. So the astrology already let us know the floods were coming. Uranus was really pertinent in letting us know about scarcity with food, about the change in the money system. Uranus sitting in Taurus is about values, it's about food, it's about supply, it's about money. So the chart has already told us that with Pluto in the background oxytorching it all, that these are the topics that we're going to be looking at: food, scarcity, money, the destruction of the old system of money. Where are your values? Who are you? And we've got till 2026, in and out for a bit towards the end, to really come into our own values, because Uranus is about the individual. It's about freedom. And so there's this, all the freedom rallies. Look what's happened with Canberra. I mean, they had over 1 million people down there not so long ago, and all these freedom protests going on all around the world. Uranus has been in Taurus for a while now. So I think it's been a couple of years now. I think it moved in 2020, and we've got another 4 years of it. So, we're rocketing through. We've learned a bit. We're at the stage now of taking action.
Values. And so that's what we are doing globally. We're
that's right.
Reassessing the values of our being individuals.
And so bringing it back to a more personal level, we start to look at the inner planets. So this is all the outer planets we've been talking about. Now, Venus and Mars, they're quite close to the Earth. So they orbit a lot quicker than your Neptune and Uranus right out there, given that's what's true, but whatever. Anyway, so Mars and Venus right now are conjunct and have been conjunct for a while. And they were travelling through Capricorn only a couple of weeks ago. They're now moved into Aquarius. When they were travelling through Capricorn with Pluto oxytorching right alongside of them, a lot of people were dealing with relationships. Funny that, masculine, feminine, and so if you look back a couple of weeks and look within yourself, or, family members, lovers, friends, kids, it was a big push in the astrology, the energy hitting us from the planets to balance out our yin and yang. We knew that. It was in the charts. We knew that years ago. We knew that was coming. So we've been walking very unconsciously for a very long time. As we wake up to all the information, one of the kids found the volume. You can turn it off if you want. That's probably nice. Yeah, so as we become more conscious, we start to use the tools that are available to us instead of just looking at the magazine at our sun sign.
Another good point is understanding that that model is both a science and an art. It's both masculine and it's feminine. So the science bit is that direct observation of the movement of the shiny dots in the perpetual motion clock, and then putting them all down there as a means of measuring where they are and when they are. But the yin side is being able to interpret that. That's the article part. You've got the masculine scientific part, got all of the little dots all calculated where they are and when they are, and then your own yin comes in to assign the values and figure out what that means. So we can have 7 billion dudes looking at the chart having 7 billion different interpretations by virtue of the fact that your life is unique and that information is going to apply to you differently than it is going to apply to someone else having different experiences. And so when we just sort of look at that practicality, we're not going to bow down to that. And so that's why I've tried to sort of say it's like a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle. It just sits there as this little mechanical device that allows you to absorb ideas that you otherwise may not have had.
Yeah, so Shay, did you want to say anything about astrology?
I'm enjoying listening.
Okay.
Also enjoying being with astrology for many years.
Yeah, yeah. I got into astrology when I was about 14. Was kind of done what I always did, which was just follow what I was attracted to, which was looking at the stars, and then just like Pete said, just paying a lot of observation and me feeling very reverent, as we will all have experienced, of a great love, and then sort of going, okay, well, maybe love's written in the stars, being an ultimate romantic. Then it led me to like, oh, well, how will I find my great love, That's what we're all looking for, isn't it? And so then started exploring sun signs, read up on all your star signs, they're called, and went along with that for a good 4 years, and then dove into astrology charts. And so I basically got into astrology really as a self-understanding tool, because my healing journey very much began by then, and so I just wanted that reflection of self, so I dove in there, and it was amazing. So I began using it as a psychoanalytical, like a psychological tool for my understanding my shortcomings and my strengths and weaknesses. And then the journey's continued ever since, and there's nothing that you can't find in there. So
yes.
Yeah, so maybe we put over to you guys questions you may have. Any questions out there or comments?
As I said at the beginning, I'm at the very beginning stages of learning all of it, and after speaking to a lot of people, I'm kind of gathering each planet has a different energy and brings a different thing to each person. Is there something you could teach me a little bit more on each planet?
Well, I like to think of the planets as, if I'm looking at it as a device of self-reflection, every planet is a reflection of one of my capacities. And so that's what I'm capable of. And then behind all those hands on the clock face are 12 fields of intelligence. So there's sort of like an energetic architecture there for Aries, which is different to the energetic architecture of Taurus. They're all related. They all flow one to the other, just like spring eventually. The sunrise comes back to sunrise. All of them have a beginning, a process, and an end. And so that clock, then we can sort of see, well, if my capacities of my ultimate expression of my beingness being the sun sign, it's in Taurus. So I'm essentially going to look at those Taurian qualities to see well, what is it saying there that means something to me? And so I can then say, okay, well, and then my feminine side, I can say, oh, what is Capricorn? So when I go into the keywords, so it's sort of like a labyrinth of keywords in the tomes of astrology. So that's the main thing that it is, so that you've got the clock, which is just a representation of the shiny dots in the perpetual motion clock. It's able to transcribe that down through all the ephemerides that they've used, and they know where each planet's going to be at which particular time. They're all moving at different speeds, so there's all completely different, unique combinations of them. And so that over the 12 signs, you're able to context or juxtapose what's that capacity. Say like Mars, well, that's my capacity to express my masculinity in a sense, so it's my deliberate doingness, as opposed to Venus being my magnetic attractability. So I can, in the Mars way, in a general sense, I can go out and deliberately do something, but in my yin way, I would magnetically attract it toward me. So that's sort of, in essence, in a general simplistic way of trying to understand those two energetics, those two capacities that we all as beings wear. Of course, I'm born a male, but I still have femininity. I still have yin traits. And so in my endeavouring to cognise my wholeness, that astrological tool has been a great mirror of my soul to help me forensically unpack those things that are not necessarily that you're aware of. So like your own, as a man, your own femininity. What does that even mean? But when you're using that sort of device to unpack it, or go, oh, and slowly over time, it's over 30 years. It's sort of like it's like you can never get sick of doing crosswords or Sudokus, And it's the same with that. You'll play with that as a tool to go, oh, yeah, and I might even look at it for weeks or months and then come back in, and then there'll be something going on, and I'll go in. Every year I do a progress chart.
Yeah, Shay's got something to add to your question.
So, just to give you all a context, the wheel that is you, it comes from your time of birth, your date of birth, and your place of birth. And so that's what Pete's talking about from his thing. And so that's how we all end up with a unique,
combination of hands on the clock pointing.
And where they are at that first breath. And so that's the basic beginnings of what you would look at. So you'd get your chart, and then we'd look at just step by step, layer, deeper into all the array of things that you can look at.
Are there good books or tools that we can use to learn how to flow better with the planets?
This is what we designed earlier. Okay, so for me with astrology, I learned the beginnings from these guys. Their knowledge is phenomenal. So I learned all the philosophy and that from these two, listening to these two and asking them lots of questions over the years. And then I just got a basic astrology book. Once again, I'm Virgonian in my approach. I know my chart, and I like to just step by step look at all the details. So I got a very basic book. And this guy has all the planets, it has all the zodiac signs, it has all the houses. So at the time, I was doing tarot readings in Bowen in a cafe, and so I'd take this book with me, and between the readings, I'd just go page by page by page and taught myself. Numerology, he's an amazing researcher. As you can imagine, with each astrologer, numerologist, they'll have their own flavour. We've got the basics, but then we've got the interpretations, and there's so many different interpretations with astrology, numerology. And you'll find your own one as you go further down the rabbit hole.
Intuition will lead as well. And that's what I've relied on in my journey. It's just I've been intuitively drawn to something or cosmically synchronized with somebody, and one thing's led to another, and that's the next book. I didn't have to figure it out. It just arrived. The next book arrived.